Hey, welcome to the podcast. This is The Surge Effect, and I'm your host, Mike Surge. This podcast will be talking about anything and everything, life in general to current events and past events, and all things about this beautiful and wonderful world that we live in. And this podcast, well, it'll probably have an effect on you.
Before we get started on today's podcast, let's talk about two different sponsors that we have. Our first sponsor is Love My Legs Owen Sound Grey Bruce. Click on the link below in the description and head on over to their website, which is a Facebook site. Has all different kinds of women's leggings on there, and they have three different styles of waistbands. And they are the only lifetime guarantee in the business. So head on over to their website, their Facebook page, and check out what they have to offer. Our second sponsor for today is He-Shirts, She-Shirts. Once again, click on the link below in the description and head on over to their website and see what they have to offer. They are more than just a T-shirt company. All right, let's get started with today's podcast. Well, hello again, and welcome to another episode of the Surge Effect. Thanks for tuning in today, everyone, to today's podcast. Much appreciated. Before I get started, like I said, I always want to post something for you just before we get rolling. I want to talk a little bit about the stuff I record with. I've put this up before, but this here is the H6 Zoom recorder. Sweet little recorder. This is one I started using before I started using the Rodecaster Pro 2. I'm going to put a picture of it up here and a link to both of those items below. Go right to Amazon and check those things out. Recording sounds awesome. My Rodecaster Pro 2 that I use all the time is amazing, and I always use it for my podcast. All right, so let's get started. So today's podcast, we're going to be talking a little bit about the Canadian Harms Online Act of, it's called Bill C-63. And if you have never heard of it, we're going to be discussing a little bit about it right now. So the Canadians Online Harms Act Bill C-63. Pay attention because you're going to be hearing a lot about this bill. It's not a good bill. They're going to hide it under the guise that it is to protect children, and I get that because we should always protect children 100%. But in this act, in this bill that they're going to try to push through the House, it is mixed in with the stuff that they want to protect the children with. So we got to be very careful because this is what they do in our House of Commons. They slide these through. They do the same thing in the States as well. But basically, in a nutshell, what this is censorship. You got to stop the censorship because this Online Harms Act, Bill C-63, it's censorship in its purest sense and form. You're going to be hearing a lot, like I said, in regards to what this bill is all about, and hopefully in this short little podcast, I'll be able to explain a little bit to you. So you're going to say to yourself, okay, well, what is this Harms Act? What is it? What is it all about? Well, you need to write your MP and explain to him what you feel about it, because I'm just going to post it up here a little bit right now. The Canadian Constitution Foundation is deeply concerned that the Online Harms Act introduced to the House of Commons on February 26 will significantly hamper constitutionally protected expressions, among other effects. So you're talking about Charter of Rights and Freedom stuff. This bill will create a new process for Canadians to report incidences of online speech directed at them as discriminatory, with a quasi-judicial tribunal ordering fines up to $50,000, up to $20,000 paid to the complainants, who in some cases would remain anonymous. Findings would be based on a mere balance of probabilities standard rather than the criminal standard of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. This bill would increase the amount of maximum sentences for advocating genocide from 5 years in prison to life in prison. That means words online could lead to life imprisonment. Think about that for a second. Life imprisonment. The bill would also allow judges to put prior restraints on people who they believe on reasonable grounds may commit speech crimes in the future, folks. They think that you're going to say something in the future, they could charge you if they believe you're going to say something, 6, 7 months down the road, or maybe next year. It's crazy stuff. This is like wild stuff. The bill would require social media companies to minimize the risk that users of the service will be exposed to harmful content with the threat of massive fines if they don't properly mitigate the risk. The mere threat of human rights complaints and fines for Canadians and social media companies will chill large amounts of otherwise protected speech. How scary is that when you think of it? How scary is that? So the scope of this application, people will be wondering, okay, what's the scope of it? Well, I'll just flop this up and read it to you. Scope of the application, the Act imposes duties on regulated services with respect to harmful content made accessible to Canadians. Regulated services are social media services that either meet the user threshold prescribed in forthcoming regulations or are designated by regulation. The Act introduces the first federal legislative definition of social media services, define them as a website or application accessible in Canada with the primary purpose of facilitating interprovincial or international online communications among others users by enabling them to access and share content. The Act further provides the adult content services that allows users to share and access pornographic content, and live streaming services are social media services. The Act does not apply to a private message featuring of a regulated service. The Act defines 7 classes of harmful content that attracts regulatory obligations. Intimate content communicated without consent, with such photos or recordings, including deepfakes depicting a person who is nude or engaged in sexual activity. Number 2, content the sexual victim victimizes a child or re-victimizes a survivor. That's number 2. Number 3, content that induces a child to harm themselves, such as content that advocates self-harm, disordered eating, or suicide. 4, content used to bully a child, including content that could cause serious harm to a child's physical or mental health, mental health through intimidation, threats, or humiliation. Number 5, content that formats hatred. 6, content that incites violence. And 7, content that incites violent extremism or terrorism. So like I said, while I started the podcast, anything that obviously is going to protect children, I think most people will be on board for. I mean, there are children, they're innocent, they don't deserve to be exposed to pornographic stuff or anything like that. But I think the parents also have to be a bit responsible as well. I don't think the government should be jumping in every single time to tell people what to do all the time. Parents have a responsibility to their children, so they shouldn't be seeing certain things online, obviously. They should be blocking that, and they should be monitoring what their children are doing a little bit more carefully, in my humble opinion. So Pierre Poilievre was asked about this hate bill when he was doing some rounds last week, and this is what he had to say about this.
With Parliament on a break, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre was in southern Ontario, where he was asked about legislation expected next week, a government bill to fight hateful and violent material online.
What does Justin Trudeau mean when he says the word hate speech? He means speech he hates.
Poilievre unloaded, calling the Prime Minister woke and authoritarian.
I point out the irony that someone who spent the first half of his adult life as a practicing racist, who dressed up in hideous racist costumes so many times he says he can't remember them all, should then be the arbiter on what constitutes hate.
It was one of Poilievre's most pointed digs at Trudeau over revelations that emerged in 2019 that years ago he wore blackface.
I should have known better, but I didn't, and I'm really sorry.
Trudeau says Poilievre has not seen the government's bill and can only attack because his party lacks any real policies.
What does he have a plan for? He has a plan for stoking division, creating fear, throwing out personal insults. That's not leadership.
Conservatives were once eager to showcase their leader's softer side, and their poll numbers.
Anyway, so that's what Poilievre had to say in regards to the hate speech when one of the reporters asked him the question. Now, you can say what you want or what you believe about hate speech. My personal belief is hate is like an emotion. It's like any other emotions, like love and guilt or remorse. It's a feeling, right? Hate is a feeling. Certain things that maybe really, really bother you and you might not like at all, you might dislike a lot, hate a lot, other people could care less about type thing. So it's all about, it's like, oh, I really love that item. Then somebody else like, I don't like that. I don't love that item. So it's a feeling. What some people believe is hatred. Other people just go, it's no big deal. I think people need to get a thicker skin when it comes to certain things. But like I said, when it comes to children, they need to be protected, obviously, from pornographic material. They need to be protected when it comes to that type of thing where, like online predators, 100%. They need to be protected from that. But you can't lump stuff in and say, oh, I think this person is going to say something that's hateful, 7 months from now and do it anonymously, get that person arrested, and that person has to pay a fine with this new bill. You can't lump that all in. That starts taking away, chipping away at your freedoms. And we can't allow that to happen, of our freedoms getting chipped away. I'm going to play this video here of, it's a Rebel News clip, and it kind of sums everything up in a nutshell, what they're thinking about. And I think they do a great job.
Go to Russia.
I think they do a great job of putting it all together, and it'll help explain a lot better of what this is all about.
And start talking about the government and see what happens, right? But that's where we're going right now. That's the same thing that's going to happen here.
People voted him in, right? So now we have to vote him out.
And I think people need to kind of put on some thicker skin. Like, unfortunately, there is criticism within the world.
Free speech was dead for a while now in Canada.
David Menzies for Rebel News here in downtown Toronto. Now, folks, earlier this week, the Trudeau Liberals tabled Bill C-63, a.k.a. an act to enact the Online Harms Act. Now, the bill's being bandied about as a means of protecting Canadians, especially those venturing onto the World Wide Web. But as always, the devil is in the details, isn't it? And the fact of the matter is, Bill C-63 is the most censorious piece of legislation ever to be introduced in the entire Western world. For example, this censorship law seeks to destroy our very thoughts, freedom of the press, freedom of expression, and it will make a mockery out of the rule of law. So-called victims of hate speech, well, they could be compensated up to $20,000 with standalone hate crimes being added to the criminal code. And the federal government would be owed an additional $50,000, like a Ticketmaster service charge or something.
But I want to be crystal clear about what the Online Harms Act does not do. It does not undermine freedom of speech. It enhances free expression by empowering all people to safely participate in online debate.
As well, those who engage in so-called hate speech might be forced to wear an electronic monitoring bracelet, and they could face several years in jail. Bottom line, under the Justin Trudeau Liberals, words are being criminalized. Thoughts are being criminalized.
And that's why we're moving forward with online harms legislation that will be introduced soon in the House and that will be robustly debated. Because I think it's something that all Canadians count on, that governments do what they need to keep all of our kids safe.
Yeah, it'll be robustly debated, but then what's going to happen, they're going to push it through like they did with Bill C-11. I spoke about Bill C-11 for 2 years. Bill C-11 was another act that basically we couldn't see things, we can't see things, read things, or hear things on the internet because of Bill C-11. And they said, oh, no, it wouldn't affect, average Canadians. But we're not seeing certain news articles because Google's blocking stuff, Twitter blocks stuff. All these social media companies are blocking things in Canada that we can't see because of that Bill C-11. Now it's come along with this new bill, Bill C-63, this Harms Act, which is going to affect a lot of people across this country, and it really, really interferes with our Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Let's venture out here at Yonge Dundas Square. While it's still called Yonge Dundas Square, the cancel culture mob is coming for this place in the months ahead. And let's try to find out what Torontonians think about Bill C-63. So we're talking about Vladimir Putin's new hate speech law, which can put people under house arrest just on the suspicion that they might say something hateful in the future. What do you think about that?
I think that's wrong.
Okay.
And I mean, we're lucky enough to live in a country where we have freedom of speech.
Yes.
It'd be nice to think that they could do the same.
That's horrible. I come from Cuba, so no, I disagree.
Okay.
I totally disagree.
Oh, damn. I don't really keep up with politics. I don't even know. But what? He's limiting free speech or just hate talk?
I think it's kind of awful for the people maybe living there that they have to be put under that kind of pressure where, what they say may put them away.
How can you judge it if it did not happen yet?
Yes.
So how are you going to measure? How are you going to measure it?
You might go to jail.
You mentioned Putin. I thought it was our leader from Canada.
You know what, sir?
Doctorian.
You caught me in my little trick because not many people are aware of Bill C-63, but you are absolutely right.
We all know about Justin Trudeau around here.
Like, that's a bad thing, and I think that that's kind of unfair, but at the same time, I'm grateful for that I'm here in Canada. I have a freedom of speech in some sort, and I mean, all I can do is kind of just wish for them to have the best, because I mean, like, that just kind of sucks. I mean,
well, sir, I have to be full disclosure here. I was kind of pulling your leg. That's not a Vladimir Putin law.
Okay.
This is what the Justin Trudeau Liberals are suggesting. Earlier this week, they tabled Bill C-63. It's not law yet, but that's what they are proposing. You mentioned you're grateful to live in a country with freedom of speech. This sounds pretty censorious to me.
So, can you define what laws are implemented in, like, because I don't really understand what you're trying to tell me right now.
Right. It's not a Russian law, it's a Canadian proposed law. What do you think of that?
I don't think much about Justin Trudeau, so I have no comment.
That's really crazy. That's illegal. That should be illegal. It should not pass. Because we should have what happened to our free speech.
We need to do a better job as a society keeping kids safe online.
So like I said, he's using that as the guise to push this Bill C-63 through, using children, obviously tugging at our heartstrings because we have children, obviously. Some of us have grandchildren, and they're innocent. So they tug at the heartstrings, of course. But this other stuff should not be included in this bill.
I was pulling your leg. That wasn't a Vladimir Putin suggestion. That was what was tabled in the House of Commons earlier this week. Bill C-63.
Yeah, he needs to go. He needs to go. Like, I was born in Havana, Cuba. My dad escaped Cuba in 1980 for us to have a better life. You know what I mean? And now I feel like Justin Trudeau is kind of like a dictator.
They want to criminalize words and thoughts. What do you feel about that?
Well, I can see their point of view once, scarily. I mean, there has to be some controls. If 13-year-old girls are committing suicide, I think it's time to rein it in a bit.
And I think that's just one reason more for maybe someone to vote for the Liberal Party or not for the Liberal Party.
Yeah.
So
I don't know what to say, but I don't see how you're going to measure it.
Absolutely ridiculous that we don't even know what the hate speech is going to be. Like, who decides what's hate and what's not? Hey, you're a jerk. You're a jerk.
I hate strawberry.
Prison for life?
I think it's wrong. I think, we have to be able to respect everyone. And the wonderful thing about Canada is we have people that come from all different countries. And I think that's the beauty of who we are and what we do. And I just hate to see him change things for the worse. It promotes problems.
Freedom of speech is important. It's important, right?
Yeah.
But you also gotta limit the hate speech, right? But like as you said, man, where does it become like you're restricted? Like, you know what I mean? It's a fine balance. I don't know, but hopefully they figure it out, right?
Freedom of speech is one thing, but you can't. I mean, like, you can't hide pedophilia and like some of the sick stuff that's going on out there.
See, that's what I was just saying. I'm totally agreeing with him, for sure.
This is the most censorious legislation that's ever been tabled anywhere in the Western world. Why do you think Justin Trudeau is doing this?
Well, because I think he's a puppet, if I can say that, because I think strings have been pulled, right?
You're handing out information about Islam and the Quran. Yeah. So in theory, if this becomes a law, somebody might make an anonymous complaint, that's another part of the law, saying this is hateful, and therefore you're going to be prosecuted. Do you think that's fair?
It's not fair, because we have peaceful literature, and Quran is a peaceful book, and Islam is a peaceful religion.
Sir, I can't help but notice these are pamphlets.
Yes.
So you get the basic idea in regards to Bill C-63. That was a great, that was some great coverage by Rebel News on that front for sure. I'm just going to show you a couple other clips. Well, speaking of Justin Trudeau, they weren't speaking too highly of Justin, were they? At all. Here is Piers Morgan. This was posted on Twitter by Cat Canada. This is Piers Morgan show, and this is what somebody had to say about Justin Trudeau.
Trudeau, for example, he bangs on about Trump being a fascist when he is the #1 woke fascist in the world, right? The most woke human being alive, and I think
he's destroying that country.
I saw a poll last week that said more young Canadians would vote for Trump than vote for Trudeau, right? Not that they're in the same.
Anyway, that's what people think about Trudeau, and that was posted on a Twitter feed. Now, speaking of hate, this literally just happened. I believe yesterday, March the 10th. This just happened, and this was in Ottawa, and I'll display it for you. You can have a watch.
Demonstrators coming down Wellington Street. Smoke in the air.
This is not just for David. We have so many answers. Please go on in freedom.
So you kind of get the idea. That was on Twitter, I believe. Yes, and that was posted just the other day. And I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. Like I said, there's so many different things going on in this world. But talking about this Bill C-63 and how it's going to affect us. Here is another. Here's a tweet by Ezra Levant from Rebel News. He literally sent it. He tagged Jordan Peterson on it, but he said, this is how it's going to affect. Here's what they're going to do and how they're going to get you. For years, the Canadian Human Rights Act, CHRA, has banned discrimination against people based on gender, identity, or expression. Yes, of course, you, of course, have never discriminated against anyone. But this new bill, it adds 13 to the CHRA, which now says that that the mere speech is considered discrimination and is likely to foment dissemination or vilification of an individual or a group. So now, if someone watches one of your YouTube videos or reads one of your tweets about, say, transgender athletes or changing in the girls' change room, as a result, is likely to have hard feelings towards trans people, and that's hate speech. Anyway, he goes on to explain a little bit about this Bill C-63 in his tweet. And, of course, towards the end he says, but here's the truly amazing part is the complaints can keep their identity a secret from you and the secret testimony from secret witnesses who get paid up to $20,000 to take a run at you. Stuff like that it's pretty bizarre that's in this bill. And like I said, most people have no idea about this bill. They have no idea that what's in it or how it's going to affect everyday Canadians. And it's really, really scary. So that's why I want to do a podcast on it. Here's a tweet from Elon Musk, literally yesterday. Said, trying to help people understand what's going on right now is like going back into a burning building to pull someone out, only to have them keep punching you in the face and demand evidence that the building is on fire, even after they admit they can see the flames. So that was an interesting tweet put out by Elon Musk yesterday. But whether you agree with this bill or whether you don't, please leave your comments below. What's happening April 1st, of course, I didn't want to cover too much of this because I'm going to be signing off here right shortly, is, of course, our carbon tax is going up another 23% here in Canada because of the climate change nonsense. And Trudeau, of course, and his bunch of cronies be getting a big raise. And there's Trudeau, he's going to be getting a gets a 10,000 increase, a raise, while we're all getting slammed with 23% increase in the carbon tax. And this person here, this Ryan, Gerritsen, says, you know, how many of you are receiving a $10,000 pay increase this year? That's quite the April Fool's, isn't it? And that's going to be dropped on all Canadians April 1st. And I literally just had this conversation with somebody not too long ago, talking about this, talking about the carbon tax and this basically this scam. Is that here we have homelessness? We can't solve that, but the government expects you to believe and me to believe that money we throw into them via tax is going to change our weather. And it's going to change the temperature, going to change the weather, and make everything better. It's not going to happen, folks. It's just not going to happen. And they also want you to believe, and they've said in our house, that they give us more money back in rebates than what we pay. That's ridiculous. That's like you going into a car dealership to buy a vehicle, and they say the thing's worth $20,000, but we're going to give you $25,000. No. Doesn't work that way. Pierre Poilievre even proved it in our House of Commons, and he even held up a piece of paper and he told you what website to go to check it out, the money that people get in Canada from at the different provinces and how much they pay in carbon tax. It's a joke, it's a scam, and that's the way it is. Anyway, I'm not going to talk too much about the carbon tax. That's going to happen on April the 1st. I just want to talk about Bill C-63. Please leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. I'm going to sign off. Thank you very much for checking out my podcast today. About a half an hour. Didn't want to get too long. And I just wanted to make you aware of what's going on in Canada with this new act and what it means for Canada, what it means for Canadians. And I just wanted to thank everyone for subscribing to my channel, liking my channel, and please don't forget to share my channel. And share videos as well, or clips. Sometimes I post shorts of little clips of my full video online as well. Just spreads the word, gets the word out. But this Bill C-63, like I said, is brutal. And contact your MPs, tell them what you think about it, and go from there. Like I said, I already told you what I feel about it. All right, so I can be found on Rumble. I can also be found on Spotify. I can be found on any Android or Apple app. Just type in The Surge Effect, and you will see my logo with the microphone on it. Social media, I'm on Instagram as well. You can find me there. And Twitter. I'm on Twitter quite a bit. Anyway, like I said, thanks again for liking and sharing. Thanks very much for subscribing, and thanks very much for watching and listening to today's podcast. It's much appreciated. And until next time, everyone, cheers.
This episode sponsored by He Shirts, She Shirts. Go to www.heshirtssheshirts.ca. Just type in the letters TSA, The Surge Effect. When you check out, type in TSA for your coupon and receive 10% off your next purchase. Thanks for listening to today's podcast, everybody.